I love you as well. F1 22 will soon be upon us, and I thought I would get together my first preview of the game. You've seen some clips of it. About a month ago we were looking at the Miami Grand Prix, and of course now I've got a hands-on and a quick look at some of the new elements as well. I suppose firstly let's talk a bit about the season. I've been enjoying the season so far. The cars are big, the cars are massive. It is quite competitive between the various cars at the moment. Ferrari appear to have dropped the ball somewhat, but I'm recording this before the Canadian Grand Prix, and I really hope as I record this that Fernando Alonso has a good start and can bring a bit of fun to the whole thing. And the fact that we do have a bit of mixed up start always adds to it in terms of the racing. Obviously I've not seen the race, so we'll wait and see how that progresses. Anyway, on to the game. So we saw the Miami Grand Prix, which looks really nice in terms of the track there, the details. The cars were the stock models of the original version of the car revealed the last couple of years, and so we're waiting for the final car chassis to be designed and input into the game. In terms of the graphics and the visuals at this moment, just looking at the game so far, it's coming along as you would expect, coming along nicely. I do particularly like the details on the cars and the material effects which are being used and various shaders now, very nice. I think in terms of track modelling, in terms of step change, if you've played Formula 1 over the years, there was a step change in 2015 to the PS4 gen as it was at that time. There was a step change again in 2018, and we're still part of that same flow since then. I expect we'll see another step change in another couple of years, and it really does need it. The tracks themselves, though they look very nice, there's still there's a lower resolution in terms of detail, bumps in the track surface. General modelling is still catering for the last gen rather than that step forward that we're all looking for. But having said that, it's not a bad looking game, and Codemasters do a tremendous job when you consider there are 20 cars, all with 4 tyres, 4 sets of suspension, and all the various parts that entails. There's also lots of new features coming this year. Of course, VR has been revealed on a trailer recently. I haven't had a chance to try out the VR yet. I will try out the VR at some point. And, this adds a lot to the overall Formula 1 experience. I can tell you right now, having tested various VR experiences in the past, that the VR gives you a very claustrophobic feeling of being in a Formula 1 cockpit, yet you understand the whereabouts in terms of the stuff that's around you. You get a really good spatial awareness when you're driving in VR. It takes a bit of time to become accustomed to it, seeing your body in front of you, but it really does add a lot to the experience. And this bodes well for the future, because I look forward to seeing announcements for PSVR 2 when that finally gets announced and revealed and released. And of course, Codemasters will be ready with their VR elements. It will add so much to the world of Formula 1 and add so much to the world of esports, because no longer will people be using T-Cam, which to me is a cheat, because you're not driving from the car position, you're driving from a higher point of view, and you have a much wider field of view. So I've never really liked that, though I do understand the fact that the difference is that you've got a wider sense of view. It would have been better to have been cockpit with triple screen, but that's another argument for another day. Suffice to say, VR is a leveler, and then you're authentically in the car. A great addition there. Another new key thing, obviously, besides the various track changes coming to this year, Australia, I think, is a particular highlight. It's a much more flowing circuit, and there are various changes here and there within the game. But I was looking forward to seeing what the F1 life is all about. Decorate your house, dress your dude, and away you go in your sports cars. And I tested with the various sports cars. I've tested it with the wheel and with the pad so far. With the wheel, it was quite strange. I run Formula 1 on a 360 degree steering rotation. When I tried that with the sports cars, they were all over the place. So I moved my wheel saturation to an automatic setting, which meant my hands were well out of sync with the hands on screen. The hands on screen were turning far more than my real hands, but it gave me a lot more degrees of rotation in the steering wheel, made it easier to drive. So I started off in Miami just doing some laps and getting a feel for that, and then after that moving to the control pad, because let's face it, most of the people that play this game will be playing with a controller, and it handles great with a control pad. I mean, I played the Formula 1 cars, did a stack of laps, and it worked well. The accessibility is fantastic. The assists and the involving aspects, they work really well with a pad. Anything outside of esports, of which is a very small portion of the people that actually play the game, will enjoy it immensely with a control pad, and I think it works very well indeed. So there's all of that to look forward to. The wheel, onto the sports cars, I found them much more fun with a controller than with a wheel on the main. Don't expect, you know, high level fidelity in terms of the sports car handling. Its inclusion is rather limited. The audio is a particular point unusual for Codemasters, where it feels like it needed a bit more time for the various corner elements and sound effects. I don't know if that will be changed by the final release, but it's just something that needed, I think, a little bit more time added to it. It's very basic. It adds a little bit just to changing up the game for casual players. I don't think necessarily the serious Formula 1 players will be spending too much time on this, but I did find it strangely compelling doing my lap times, working my way up the leaderboard. I made it to number 1 on the leaderboard. That's right, number 1 on the leaderboard, best in the world. There's only a handful of people on there, but I'm currently the best in the world, and I found that the McLaren was the better of the cars. But it was quite... I found that with the sports cars, you really had to slow down, accelerate out. So slow in, fast out in terms of getting the most of the car. This just takes me onto the racing line. I was talking about accessibility. Just to commend Codemasters on what is the best racing line I think I've ever used in a video game. It really works well depending on your line and your power. It is a huge assistance. It's something I would absolutely ban online if you could, from players using it, or especially from various esports aspects, because it is so good that when I was going through high-speed corners and I was wondering, oh, should I lift or be committed? It was bang on. If it said green, you go flat through there. You keep the angle of your car right and you'll make it. And I found that with the sports cars, it was even more effective than Formula 1, because sports cars, you were much more likely to lift on corners, whereas the Formula 1 cars take so many corners flat now, it's just a committed throw in. But it worked very well, and I was well impressed with how well that worked. The sports cars themselves look nice. You know, the car modelling is great. The dashboards, as you'll see, look good. It's all there. I think really just the subtlety in the physics is, you know, there's room to work on there. And I think the same with the Formula 1. I think there's, in terms of the physics engine they've got, it's been fine for the purpose that it's had on the current gen. But I think when we move on to the next gen, I'll be expecting a lot more of it. I'm somebody who's not particularly felt the handling. I was talking about previous Formula 1 games for a minute. I've not particularly felt the handling of previous Formula 1 games. This is quite similar. It's built on that. And that's down to two things, really. It's down to lack of feeling through the wheel, lack of feeling of the wheels spinning. So when the wheels spin, you see them spin a lot on real Formula 1 cars out of corners. If you get that kind of wheel spin on the game, the car will just turn around on you. The esport players adapt to this very well by shifting up and using the torque of the engine, but in general it doesn't communicate well enough. You're just literally spinning out if you're in the wrong gear all the time, no matter what the throttle response is. There's also no lateral movement. There's no sliding of the car. So when you watch Fernando Alonso going around Canada, as I record this, he's mostly sideways through the corners, but Formula 1 cars are always sideways to an extent because they're turning in to the limit of traction. That traction is braking subtly and they're sliding across the track surface, trying to minimize that while maximize the forward momentum. This is a more complex physics situation than we've had in Formula 1 games to date, and that continues. So in that sense, for me, it doesn't necessarily feel as natural as I would like it to feel, and so it's something I necessarily haven't put the kind of hours in I would like to put into a Formula 1 game. But either way, it satisfies the masses, so you know what you're going to get with this. I can't see anything like that changing, but there is a lot more detail through the wheel in terms of environmental effects this time. I'm not going too much into physics and wheel detail on this video because I'm waiting for the final build, and when we do the review I'll break it down in a bit more detail. I'll analyse it. I'll run some laps that I know well across different games, and then I will come back to you on that. Suffice to say, there is a lot more detail in terms of curbs, lumps and bumps, but still there's some issues with just general feeling of the tyres rather than the environment. It's a different thing, and it's something which obviously is still a work in progress. Commendable to the team though to see the scale of this game. So many elements in there, so many aspects, so many options. You know, every year when a Formula 1 game comes out, I say it's the biggest Formula 1 game ever, but ultimately for me personally at the moment, the sports cars are nice, though I've mentioned this on the trailers. I would have liked to have seen more in the way of classic cars and building the heritage of Formula 1. I do feel it's really lost in the video game world, and it's important to hold on to that heritage, and we're just not doing that well enough in the video game world at the moment. There's so many cars, we have them for a year or two and then they're gone, and I think that's a shame. Whether it's down to Codemasters, EA or F1, I don't know, but I think it's the work that goes into it, the passion to get that licensing, to get those cars in the game. It seems to be a crying shame that we can't get those cars in the game long term as part of a larger historical section of the game. And Codemasters, now I feel about this, I love historical Formula 1, I love the historical circuits, the cars, the sound, and I would love to see that come back, especially with VR. The chance to drive all of these old classic cars would be wonderful. But other than that, that's it really. I'm going to look forward to the final game. I'm looking forward to seeing, I won't be able to test everything in the final game. I'm not going to have the kind of time available to really get into the pit stops and the failures and the pit stops and some of the other elements in there. But I'm interested to see how it comes together and hopefully test it on the probably the PS5 version, as I've got it set up with my wheel. I haven't done too much on the wheel. I've mentioned in this video I've had a few issues with my wheel with F1 last year and this year. Can't really get to the bottom of it at the moment. Can't get entirely comfortable with my wheel on the game. Obviously there's a sweet spot to getting your wheel just right on F1, and I haven't necessarily found it, but it should be far more refined when it comes to the console versions. I do generally find they work straight out of the box. And that's it really on this preview. F1, it's been an interesting year for the sport. We've had all the issues regarding the porpoising and the bouncing at Mercedes, and as I say, we'll see how that affects those guys and all the other teams moving forward. I'm very interested to see how the cars evolve throughout the season and how the cars stop evolving as teams run out of budget and resource towards the last few races, depending on the other issues off track. So I kind of feel for Haas. Mick has had a couple of big accidents which cost a lot of money, no doubt affected them in their development process, but you know, this is all part of Formula 1. It's going to be interesting to see how teams manage those budgets throughout the season, and also how the new aspects regarding the use of wind tunnels affects those developments as well. But I'm rambling about F1 there. I hope you look forward to the game. I look forward to the game, and I'll give you a full review in a couple of weeks' time, or whenever we get we get access to the final game, and go through it in a bit more detail and a deeper analysis then. But that's it from me for now. As ever, more soon. Hello viewers, well thanks for watching the video today. Do like and subscribe, it supports what we do. Do become a YouTube member. YouTube Patreon supports all of our content you see on the channel, and of course lots of gaming from retro to modern games. I love it all in terms of racing action. So click on one of the two videos just there to find out more.